Excuse me. Councillor Chandler. Good evening to everyone here and all of those watching on internet land, and welcome to July 15th regular meeting of Council. The City of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their traditional territory upon which we gather with gratitude. Is there any member of Council who wishes to have any of the agenda items 1 through 3 removed from the consent agenda? All right, I need a mover and a seconder for the consent agenda then. Moved by Councillor Chandler, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We have a couple of presentations tonight. First one would be the Parksville Downtown Business Association and the introduction of our 2019 Youth Ambassadors.
Is it okay if I stand? Thank you. Your Worship, Council, staff, and the gallery, and those watching at home. I'm Pam Bottomley, Executive Director of the Downtown Business Association. It's my very great pleasure to introduce to you and the community tonight Layla and Ruben Mohabir Ortiz, brother and sister, who are our 2019 Downtown Youth Ambassadors. This is the 5th year we've done this. We've found that some of you are aware of the reports they generate at the end of their summer that provides some stats and information on trends of visitors and what people are looking for and how our downtown can be improved. This year there won't be a verbal presentation at the end of the summer as Layla is off to Ottawa to university on Labor Day weekend. So if I'm going to ask them to give you a little bit of information about themselves, and if you've got any questions about them, what they do for the summer, and what they're up to for the rest of their next career, I'm sure they'd be happy to answer any questions. Okay, have a seat.
Hi, I'm Layla. I just turned 18 and I will be going off to Ottawa on August 30th for a Bachelor in Journalism and Humanity at Carleton University.
Hi, I'm Ruben. I just turned 15. I'm going into grade 10 at Bolinas, and I really enjoy this job that I'm doing. This is our 4th week on the job, and it's been a lot of fun.
I've seen you walking around downtown, up and down the streets.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Anybody have anything they want to ask these charming people? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So you're brother and sister.
Yes.
Did you apply together as a youth ambassador, or was it luck of the draw that you got to be put together?
Well,
It was separate interviews, so there's a few other people who applied, and we ended up together.
yeah, we were lucky enough to be able to spend our last summer together.
I think that's
before I moved
amazing.
away. Yeah.
And that's so.
Thank you.
I wish you the most joy and a lot of entertainment and knowledge and a wealth of information from the visitors in our community that
Thank
come
you.
here. So thank you.
you so
I'm
much.
sorry that I will miss the last presentation, but I'm sure that Ruben will do you proud.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Chandler and then Councillor Fraz.
Thank you, through your worship. We really appreciate you guys being involved in this. I think you obviously are going to represent our city really well. You've already done that. You've been out and pounding the streets and getting info out there. So I think it's great. We're proud to have you as part of our city. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Fraz.
Just want to say thanks for being the youth ambassadors in Parksville. I really like what you guys are up to out there, and I've seen you around already. It's my understanding that you guys speak a couple of languages as well, fluent in
Yeah.
French.
Yes.
Yes.
I really appreciate having that French language out on the West Coast here, and I'm excited and hope that you get to use it with the visitors and tourists, and what other kind of languages that you might bump into. So I hope you have a lot of fun with that.
Thank you.
You're going to enjoy Carleton. It's a great school.
I'm really excited.
Good for you. Good for you. Anybody else have anything? Thank you very much. Good luck. Enjoy it. And if we can be of any help, come in and see us.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have two delegations tonight, Parksville and District Chamber of Commerce banner campaign for Orange Bridge.
I guess that's a sneak preview. Thank you very much, members of the council, staff, people in the gallery. About a year and a half ago, the Chamber of Commerce conducted a business walk in the Orange Bridge region. And there was a common thread that came out of going and talking to businesses about, when we do a business walk, we talk about how are things, what's good, what's bad, what can we do to help. And one of the common pieces that came through was that there was room for some improvement in terms of appearance and services. So we invited owners and business operators to a few breakfast meetings where there was discussion about the Orange Bridge Business District and how we could unify and beautify the district. One of the ideas that kept on coming up to the forefront was banners on the light standards, defining the area and bringing a creative, colorful flair to the street. I'm going to shrink this down a little bit so you can see the whole thing. There you go. Robert Held, who is an artist and business owner in the Orange Bridge District, took on the task of designing a banner. We've sourced a local company who produces these banners, and with your approval, we're ready to place our order. The district runs from the Orange Bridge to McVickers Street, and we have engaged all of the business owners and operators to support our first Orange Bridge District initiative. So far, we have a beautiful design created by Robert Held. We have a budget, we have a funding formula, and we have an installation plan. So the estimated cost for the banners and the installation is just over $7,000, and we've come up with a formula to split the cost among the businesses along the strip. Maybe a good place to say we're not here asking for money. The organizing committee for this initiative includes a number of the local businesses, Bruce Alexander from Parksville Chrysler, Andy Lancaster from Oceanside Harris Chevolts, Al Cameron from Blue Nose, Robert Held, of course, from Held Art Glass, Donna Andrus from Ladies Mantle, and from the Chamber, myself, the Chamber President Jeannie Maltison, and our Marketing and Communications Coordinator Lisa Wallace. The support for this initiative from local businesses has brought us to this point where we feel confident moving forward with this evening's request for support from the City of Parksville. So we'd like to work together to make this project a success and unite the businesses in the Orange Bridge Business District. And I'll take whatever questions you have.
Are there any questions for the delegation? Councillor Greer and then Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm wondering what the advantage is when you talk about business and economic development. I don't see this as economic development at all. I don't mind the idea of some banners up to brighten up the area. I don't know why that we would want to rename an area over some other area. So maybe you could explain why. I know you have a little bit explained it, but I just don't see where this is such a remarkable situation where it's going to be economic development.
Well, I think any time that you can improve the attractiveness of a region, you're going to draw more people to the region, which is going to expose more people to the businesses in that region, which is going to enhance their business prospects. What they do with those business prospects is up to them, but the idea is to grow the businesses in that region so that they create more employment, so that they improve their economic impact in the community. In terms of the naming of a district or the naming of a region, the businesses themselves are the people that have put this together under our, we've just been facilitating this It's the businesses that have put this together. We already have an area of the city that's named the Parksville Downtown. These are folks that came up with something so that they would have a unifying piece in order to look at initiatives like putting up banners in their region.
It just seems to me that, as you mentioned, could I have a follow-up here?
Thank you.
Thank you. And it just goes to show you that we have different districts, and I'm not so sure how that works. I would like to see, I mean, we're only a small community, and I think we should all be involved in one issue rather than start separating various areas. It's just my thought that I just don't see the purpose of renaming, especially when it's on the highway. I mean, the visibility there is tremendous. You couldn't get any better visibility. Anyways, that's just my comment.
Thanks.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm the chamber liaison for this group, so I guess I have more communication with different chamber members and business owners in that area. So this has been going on for quite a while. It is on a lower scale, I would kind of say, than the Downtown Business Association by a great deal. They do not have a BIA or a formal group or anything, but it is an area, and it is in the entrance to our community. And it is, I'm going to be blunt, lacking in some visibility, some color, and just some attraction, and that too. So whenever a group of like-minded individuals get together and work together and bring something forward, I'd like to be able to support them. So I'd like to later on, but just to let Mr. Burden know, and that too, that I'd like to put a notice of motion forward that we would support this going forward. So I don't think I have anything else to add at this point in time. It's just a statement, not really any questions for Kim, except for maybe how long would it take for the banners to be done? And are you asking for the city's help in installing, or this is strictly?
No, I've had some conversations with the folks at operations, and I understand that they don't have the equipment to install banners, and that they actually contract out the installation of the other banners in the community. We're prepared to do that. And to your point about the people that are involved, they've been very, very explicit in saying they don't want a formal organization, and that they're appreciative of the chamber being the facilitator so that they can work together. I'm thinking probably a 3 to 6 week turnaround as soon as we get everything in place. So we're going to miss the summer season, and that's life. And I understand that there may possibly some special plans for next summer, which we're going to have to deal with. But they'll be there and they'll be available, and we can make some switch over. I think the only thing in terms of infrastructure that we need, some of the lamp posts along the way do not have the banner racks, but I do understand that there's some down in the Public Works yard that we would be able to use. Other than that, this group are prepared to fund it, make sure that the installation goes ahead, and adhere to any instructions that we have from the operations folks.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
If I may, through your worship, question for Mr. Burden. Thank you very much for your presentation, Kim. And I wanted to just question. I applaud your effort. I think it's a good move. Anything that increases business viability in our area is a good thing to me. My question is your naming of it as the Orange Bridge Business District is interesting because both you know and I know that in previous campaigns we both campaigned on an effort to repaint this bridge.
It's not over.
Exactly, and that was going to be my point in case, because there's still rumblings going on about it doing that very same thing. So your Orange Bridge could very definitely be a different colored bridge. So I'm just wondering if your banners are going to be made with permanent markers, or are you going to use soluble paint?
The Orange Bridge is a landmark in our community. I think it needs to stay orange. People refer to it, okay, and the name came from the businesses that were engaged and involved. People talk about the Orange Bridge. People talk about things as a distance from the Orange Bridge. People talk about this side of the Orange Bridge and the other side of the Orange Bridge. It's a landmark.
If I may, as a follow-up, Your Worship, just confirming anyways that you are aware that it may not always be an Orange Bridge. That's all that I'm saying at this point.
Another project.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kim, could you just tell me how long the banners will be up again?
Well, that's up to you.
Okay, so it wasn't just a summer project?
They'll be up until there's a requirement to replace them with something else, and we'd like them to stay up as long as they last. I don't know what the lifespan of a banner is until it fades into something that's not as pretty as it was when it went up. I think the banners represent something beyond what's hanging on a lamppost. There's a definite move from this group of individual business people to create something better for their business area. And the banners is a step, and if they need to be replaced at some point down the road, then I'm sure that they'll be replaced.
Follow up?
Sure.
Thank you. I was on the workshop, or in the workshops for a memorial, and a comment came up that I just want to share with you that that perhaps the city's should have a little more uniformity when it comes to signage and whatnot. So I just thought I'd pass that along so that if we have every district that wants to have some different name and whatnot, perhaps we should look at everything as a whole first.
Perhaps. I'm not opposed to that, but there are some other forces at work that.
Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, through your worship, to Mr. Burden. Kim, I just wonder, in relation to putting these banners up, do you have to hire JSK,
Yep,
the
have to hire
traffic
JSK,
people?
we have to hire Raybeck to run the truck, and yeah.
And we're going to try to do this during hours, obviously, it's not going to impact traffic too much.
Three in the morning is probably a good time.
Okay, all right.
And I mean that.
Yeah, okay. Follow up, if I could?
You may.
I'd just like to make a comment. Actually, I know several of these businesses quite well. I actually operated a mobile food truck down that area for 3 years, right beside, plugged into Robert Held art class. I love the idea. There's a new restaurant going across the street where the Orange Bridge Cafe used to be, and he was defunct for about 3 years there with nothing going on. So it's kind of nice to see something happening down there again, and some of the businesses like the old Domino's that's moved out, that's going to become something else. And so I think we're going to see some more activity there. And so I do support the idea of the signage. I think it's a great idea. Again, I caution the idea that it could change color, as Doug said, and Councillor O'Brien, and also the concern that it's splitting the areas. It would be nice to see one manageable kind of segment and then everybody's Orange Bridge district with that same signage, but I'm not really opposed to this. I think it's a good idea to promote the area, so that's my comment.
Thanks.
Any other? I think my only concern, I've expressed it to you, Kim, is that we have our 75th year anniversary coming up next June 19th, sorry. And I've only got that wrong about 14 times in the last week. And during that time, we're putting together a committee to discuss what we want to do. And one of the things right out of the chute, of course, is banners throughout the town. Until we know what the committee wants to do, whether they want to put it up in November and carry it through until June or July, or put it up at the first of the year and carry it on, I'd like to caution that we may not be jumping up and down to make a decision right until September, when we start putting this committee together and have some conversations with it. I think it's a reasonably good idea to do this. I have some concerns, as have been expressed, I don't care what color the bridge is. I think everybody will always know that it's the Orange Bridge District, and we'll all relate to that. But I think it'll be something of identification. So let's see where it goes, and we'll wait to hear the motion or the notice of motion at the end. All right.
Yeah, and we've told the group about the city anniversary, and they're absolutely prepared to work with you. These things can be removed and reinstalled fairly simply. We'd just like to get going. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our next delegation is the Oceanside Community Safety Volunteers, and it's the overview of our community programs. So if the gentleman would like to come forward, perhaps you could give us a name for all of you so that we know who you are.
John Bishop. I'm on the board of the Oceanside Community Safety Volunteers, and I have been a volunteer with the group actively and not in the board since 2006. And I go out there and beat the bushes and also help make policy for them. So I'm here to show you some of the things we do.
I'm Benjamin Marshall, resident of Parksville, British Columbia for the last 38 years.
Good evening, I'm Rick Johnson, a business owner in Parksville for the last 25 years.
We are here to express our concern about the amount of crime being reported in Oceanside lately, both through the Oceanside Community Safety website, the Parksville Qualicum Beach News, and social media. Over the last few months, our city and regions has experienced some very high number of calls relating to service from the RCMP. These 2019 calls are creating increased amounts of demands on our local policing agency as they continue to grow. We are currently seeing approximately 300 calls per week for the Oceanside area, and this is up substantially from past years. Myself and another group of citizens successfully completed the British Columbia Justice Institute Reserve Constable Program, paid for by local municipalities, including the City of Parksville. This BC sanctioned program covers topics such as introduction to the criminal justice system, police responsibilities, legal issues, professionalism, ethics and discretion, going on patrol, participating in community policing, and officer safety. This program very clearly defines what is permitted by civilians and what the domain of the police is. What we are looking for is the City of Parksville to support a beta project to utilize trained volunteers such as myself, to patrol in an active crime prevention role versus more passive crime prevention role offered by Oceanside Community Safety Crime Watch Citizens on Patrol. We will be working closely with the OCS group to ensure we have combined effort during patrolling days and nights. This would not be an enforcement role, but aligns with activities currently permitted with the bylaw style of conduct and raises the visibility of crime prevention in the time frame of midnight to 6 a.m. and during larger local events and festivals. Volunteers would be attired with uniform, clothing attire similar to existing standard security style uniforms. Rick's going to show some examples of that after. To effect this new role, volunteers working in pairs would be permitted to exit vehicles, unlike the present program provided by Oceanside Community Safety.
Our proposal to implement this idea of a Parksville Crime Reduction Unit would require financial consideration to purchase 10 uniforms, a vehicle, and local business has already stepped forward with an offer. Vehicle insurance, gas, and upkeep insurance communications equipment using existing city and office space. A local business has again stepped forward. Initial funding would be estimated at $25,000 to $30,000. To support this proposal, Oceanside Community Safety is a BC non-profit Canada Revenue Agency registered. A charity has been approached to provide bookkeeping and financial services. The initiative is brought to you by concerned City of Parksville residents, which are designed to assist at patrolling functions over and above the current community safety services provided in Parksville. Volunteers would not have police authority and would adhere to Canada Criminal Code, provincial statutes, and City of Parksville bylaws. Thank you.
We at the Oceanside Community Safety Volunteers have approximately 140 current active volunteers in a group of several different types of activities. We do vehicle patrols, 2-man to a vehicle. We are the eyes and the ears for the RCMP. When we see an issue, we notify dispatch and they take care of it. If we see a stolen car, we identify it and dispatch tells us what to do on this. We do not leave the vehicle, we do not approach people. We simply are the eyes and the ears. Tomorrow morning, I will be on a foot patrol with another member who is a past 27-year veteran of the Edmonton Police Service, and we will be, as you may have seen on the PQB news recently, doling out love notes after inspecting people's vehicles to make sure that they are now aware that they should be locking their vehicles, that they should be hiding their valuables so as to not incur or invite crime to participate in their lives. The amount, we have a website which is available to everybody, and we have some of that is available to members only. Just to give you an example, one of our new members has created a crime map, and we'll also be mapping out our block watch groupings as well to show where those are so that people can actually see where they can do it. Just to give you an example, for instance, this map, and if you expand it, you can actually see the area much more clearly. I won't expand it because then I can't retrieve it, but this, for instance, tells you what exactly in file was that happened. One of our volunteers is an active volunteer and in the RCMP, and he gets the crime reports. He puts them all on our website. Along this, our crime map volunteer maps them all out so people can actually see what's happening and then make themselves more aware to protect themselves. It is the responsibility of me, the owner of the home, of me, the owner of the vehicle, me, the owner of part of my community, to try to stop crime from happening by being more responsible. And that's what we try to do. I passed out a number of handouts here on what we are in very general terms. This paper that each of you got with the weekly crime stats, as my colleagues have mentioned here, shows that we had in 2019, through from March to June, we had 5,903 calls. You can see how they're broken down, and these are open files that with 4 police constables in a single-man car out in the community, calling from Deep Bay to Nanuus and up to almost the McMillan Forest, and that's what we've got for coverage here in an active RCMP people. So they need all the help that we can give them, and this is a presentation that I think will help enhance the safety and security of Parksville. So thank you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Questions from anyone? Councillor O'Brien.
If I may, through your worship, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your presentation. It is well thought out, and you've done a lot of work on this. We appreciate what you've already done as well, believe me. As this new, as you say, vetted program been run, vetted by the RCMP itself, have the RCMP provided any comment or given you their blessing that they would like to see you take it to the next level that you're proposing?
In my understanding, there has been some conversation with one of the other auxiliary constables through the RCMP, but as far as a blessing, I'm not sure whether I have the correct answer to that.
Any other questions? Help me just understand one part, if you would. Are you proposing a second organization, or is it going to be combined as one total organization?
We would be working together. We would be signed on through the Oceanside Community Safety Volunteer Program, and then if this program builds as it's a beta program, we would hope that maybe there could be a second tier brought in through that.
But it would always fall under the auspices of the Oceanside Community Safety. Is that what I'm understanding?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. With the beta program, you said that you had gone through these kind of certification type aspect. How many people in the community have? Do you know?
There's 7 of us.
And how long did it take to go through?
It's a 6-month program, 360 hours of training.
Any other questions? Councillor Fraz.
Thanks for taking the time to present to us today. I think this idea that you guys are bringing forward is much needed. Just when I look at things that are happening in IMO, like in VIX grounds, I like the thought how you talked about being able to get out of the vehicle. So I'm assuming that's to be able to get closer and surveillance a little bit more. My question would be, with the financial support you guys are looking for, would this be supplying any body cameras by chance? Because I think this is something that would be a good asset or a good tool to have if you're doing those kind of patrols out there. So it'd be something that I'd like to see.
Yeah, I definitely think that would be a good thing to add to the kit that we're looking at. Again, it's just in the beta stages right now, so we've got some baseline stuff, but I would see that as being definitely an asset to the kit.
And if I may follow up too, with that as well, are you guys planning to do bike patrols? Is that part of it as well? Like I see bike patrol on the form here.
Yeah, that was one of the plans as well, as doing some bike patrols. Once we establish exactly the scope of what we are able to do, we'll figure it out, and obviously be working in conjunction with the RCMP to make sure we're within our limits.
Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
I think Councillor Chandler.
We don't let him talk. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. So, thank you for your presentation. And thank you for all the work that you do. It's greatly appreciated. I guess my question to you is this an information format, or do you have an ask?
Yeah, I would say that it is, like Rick said here, it's kind of a both. We are filling you with the information, but also asking for the permission to start the beta program.
I believe Councillor Chandler is going to be coming forward with a motion sometime tonight. Kenner, you can wait till the new business portion of it if you would, so that we can do them all at one time. All right? Certainly, please.
Firstly, through your worship, to John Bishop from the OCS. John, I guess looking at the crime stats, in relation to what you've seen over the last 2-3 years, where are we sitting at right now in comparison to what you've been dealing with over this last period? You got here in 2006. Yeah. Obviously, the last 3 years or so, has it been pretty dramatic increased?
The first years, our active patrols went out. We noticed several deer, several rabbits. That scene has changed significantly. The one drawback that we have as Oceanside Community Safety Volunteers is the bulk of us are quite a bit over 50, and that's a funny one. Basically, for the most part, we only have maybe 4 members who go out after midnight, and they stay out till 5 o'clock in the morning, and there's very few of them, and that would be at the very most like one day every 2 or 3 weeks kind of situation. And these are mostly young ladies, and they're very brave and so on. But for the most part, most of our patrols are done daytime patrols, as Staff Sergeant Paletti told us. People don't stop stealing during the day, and they don't only steal at night. So we are out there in many different areas, but usually between the areas of 10 in the morning and midnight is the latest we go. And this supplemental group would, the beta group would certainly supplement that significantly. So back to you.
A follow-up, Councillor Chandler?
Yes, please. Thank you, through your worship. Just a comment to the new gentleman, potentially our new program, if it does go through this evening. I just want to thank you for coming forward with this. I think, you know, the community itself has had a lot of concerns, a lot of fears over what's been going on. There's like a, you know, not that we live our lives by Facebook, but we see a lot of activity on Facebook where people are upset and they're wondering what's happening and what we're doing about it. And I think, you know, I'd like to applaud you all, like especially from your previous roles and what you're doing now and what you're willing to do as volunteers. I mean, it's pretty amazing. If we didn't have volunteers in this city, we wouldn't have the kind of city that we've got. So I applaud you both and the rest of the crew that is interested in moving forward with this. And as well, I applaud John and his crew for all of the, John trained me, I was involved in it, and he trained me leaving love notes on vehicles and a whole bunch of different things and patrolling. And I think it's, you know, it's an area that it's really important to all of us to make sure we stay on top of crime and stay on top of a deterrent. I think that's really the biggest thing, is make sure people see you, make sure people know we're here, and they can't just rampantly go out and just steal and so on and so forth, especially transient criminals. We need to stop that, get license plates and stop them in their tracks. So thank you.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I may, to the committee presenting again tonight. Just a question regarding, we saw your samples of your uniforms that you're proposing to get here and so forth, and look very, well, so from the headers, they're police issue style anyways and so forth. If successful, are you going to have identification marked on all of your uniforms and so forth? Where I'm going here is, instead of having somebody, you know, accusing your team of impersonating a police officer type of thing, are you going to be clearly identified on your uniforms as to the name of your organization? And have you come up with that exact name yet, or is that just conceptual?
Yeah, we would definitely have a differentiation from any law enforcement at all. And I don't believe we've come up with a name yet, but it would be very clear that we are not police officers in any capacity. Again, we would be doing a preventative role, not an enforcement role. So.
Okay, we're going to move right along. We get finished. Should be made abundantly clear, though, that this is nothing to do with the city of Parksville. This is to do with the volunteer organization, of which have done an amazing job over the last couple of years with us. Thank you very much for all the work that you do, and hopefully we can continue on in the later hours of the morning, if you will. So thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Mr. Russell, would you please give us the background on the issue regarding follow-up report and consideration of the application to amend the official plan and zoning development at 113 and 116 Island Highway West to facilitate a mixed-use high-rise development?
Certainly, if I may, Your Worship. For council consideration this evening is a follow-up report respecting the application at 113 and 161 Island Highway West. The application was presented to council previously on April the 15th, 2019. Since that meeting, staff has been in discussion with the applicant on 3 items that were noted in that resolution. That was to look at the use, look at the height of the building, and to look at amenity aspects of the proposal. The use aspects have, there's been a meeting of the minds on the use aspects. With respect in the height amenity aspects, the proponent appears to be looking to keep their options open at this stage and would like the application to move forward to the public input process. The recommendations are as per the agenda.
Thank you. I'm going to speak first, if everybody wouldn't mind. First off, I'm going to make a motion to defer this matter until the second meeting in September, and I need a seconder for that, if you would. Councillor Wilson. And I'm going to tell you my reasons why I'm going to ask for the deferral. There are many, and I would like to explain some of my thoughts. First off, if we just vote on the recommendations and the recommendations are defeated tonight, that would mean that the developer would have to wait 6 months before they can bring back any revisions. In spite of the following, I would like to show this developer that we are trying to work with them and to get this done in a timely manner, but we need to be met halfway. We are not interested in hearing about how much taxes they are paying any more than we're interested in what the return on investment will be. I must say that I'm very disappointed in the fact that the developer has not made any attempts to compromise on their site plan. They have come back with the same building heights as the last time. In fact, other than a few minor changes in the rezoning, they have not done anything that we have suggested. The Director of Planning sent them a 4-page memo on suggestions and was asked specifically on a number of times regarding what their amenities contribution would be, and we have received a 2-paragraph response. I would say that recently our bylaw officers contacted the developer about the condition of their property, and to their credit, the developer did in fact clean up the yard and did all that was asked of him. Having said that, as someone who wants extensive approvals from the city and needs the support of council, one would hope that the developer would in fact tear down the building and remove the eyesore from our main intersection. This would help us feel like they wish to be part of our community and display their goodwill, which I know would be greatly appreciated by our residents. It is my feeling that we cannot consider their request for 19 stories. The building is 16 stories, and then the parking garage is 3 stories. So if you're standing on the beach, it will be 19 stories for the one building and 15 stories for the other, and then they're asking for 4 additional buildings of 8 stories. It is proposed to have 299 residential units, with 60 of them being rental. There's almost 68,000 square feet of commercial and office space as well. That's probably more space than the whole of all the rest of the downtown Parksville. This site is extremely overbuilt for our community. The purpose of my request for a deferral is to allow the developer time to go back and address the issues we have put forward and sincerely work with our amazing staff. They need to listen to what we want and compromise. This land has been vacant for a long time, and if we want to get what we want in a rezoning, then we can wait a little bit longer if need be. So I'm making that proposal. Any other discussion? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor of deferring till the second meeting in September? Considered unanimous. Thank you. Please. Mr. Russell, would you please give us the background on the issue regarding consideration of permanent closure and disposal of a portion of Despard Avenue West directly adjacent to 423 Alberni Highway?
Certainly, if I may, Your Worship. For council consideration this evening is the introductory report for a proposed partial road closure of a section of Despard Avenue West that is adjacent to the property at 423 Alberni Highway. This evening, we're looking for permission to proceed with notice. Ultimately, a road closure cannot be considered until we've undertaken an input process per the legislation. So that's basically what we're asking for this evening.
Sorry. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Moved by Councillor O'Brien, second by Councillor Greer. Any discussion on this? Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to go through you to Mr. Director Russell. It says in here financial implications. I'm just wondering, is there some amount of compensation that the city would get for this? Thank you.
Yes, sorry. If I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Wilson. Certainly council can seek compensation for that. So typically that can be based on assessed value, and that's what in the financial implication section, that is what's stated is what the current assessed value is. After notice is done, that would be the question that would be proposed to council. Once we've done the notice, council would be questioned whether it wants to dispose the land. If it wants to dispose the land, how much does it want, and who does it want to make the land available to?
Any other questions? Then I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Mr. Russell, you're doing well, so keep going.
Okay. If I may, Your Worship, this is one of two reports with respect to a subdivision this evening. This first report is for a 10% frontage relaxation for two of the parcels that form the subdivision. They are proposed lot 7 and proposed lot 8. And this is more a function, it's not that there's not sufficient section of parcel along a road, it's but for the fact that the perimeter of the parcel is so large that the percentage is small compared to the overall perimeter. And it's a kind of a weird concept to explain, and I'm probably doing not a great job of it, but essentially, if these were smaller lots, they would actually meet the 10% frontage requirement, but because the percentage of them that isn't on a road is greater, they're not meeting that requirement. And so in order to allow the subdivision to proceed, for the approving officer to consider it, there is a need for council to grant an exemption to that 10% requirement for these two parcels.
Councillor Fraz is moving the recommendations. Seconder, Councillor Greer. Discussion? Everybody's clear on Director Russell's explanation? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Consideration of payment for parkland purposes applicable to the subdivision at 403 Wembley Road. Mr.
Certainly, if I may, Your Worship. In a subdivision where there's more than 3 lots, there's a requirement to dedicate 5% of the land that forms the subdivision either as parkland or to make a cash contribution for parkland purposes. In this particular case, the policies of the city do not support a small park in this particular location. So the recommendations are per the agenda to that cash be considered. An appraisal has been supplied that has established a dollar amount, and it's per the recommendations.
I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Wilson, second by Councillor Greer. Councillor Greer, you took my breath away there. Discussion, Councillor Fraz.
Through the mayor to Director of Planning, I have a question regarding this 5% in cash. Would it be strictly for to purchase parkland, or could it be used for park improvements?
If I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Fraz, it's spelled out in the legislation, so historically you could only use it for parkland. There have been some recent changes that do allow for some park improvements as a result. I'm not an expert on the extent of what those park improvements can be, but it's not strictly land any longer.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Mr. Russell, would you please give us the background on the follow-up report consideration of development variance permit at 550 Willow Street?
Certainly, if I may, Your Worship. This is a follow-up report for a fence. The proponent is requesting an increase from the standard 1.2 meter height requirement to a 2 meter height requirement in order to allow for a decorative wood fence and gate. Since the last council meeting where this was presented on June the 17th, a required notice has been provided to adjacent properties. As of this moment, no correspondence have been received. If there is anyone in the gallery present who wishes to speak to it, council would need to avail them of that opportunity.
Do we have anybody in the audience that would like to speak to this matter? Seeing none, then I will ask for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor O'Brien, second by Councillor Wilson. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Mr. Russell, would you please give us the background on the follow-up report consideration of a development variance permit, development permit, and affordable housing agreement bylaw at 151 Despard Avenue West?
Certainly, if I may, Your Worship. This is a follow-up report. This matter was originally presented to council on June the 17th. Since the date of that meeting, required notice has gone out to all property owners within 50 meters of the subject property. This is a variance request to reduce the usable open space that forms part of an apartment complex from 4,152 square meters to 1631 square meters. As of 4 p.m. today, no correspondence have been received with respect to the variance. As far as the development permit goes, it meets the applicable guidelines, and appearing later on the agenda is the housing agreement authorization bylaw for final consideration. I'm going to jump back to the variance. So at this meeting, again, if there's any person who believes their property is affected, council would need to make an opportunity for them to be heard.
You're taking my job away. Are there any individuals in the audience that would like to speak to this matter? Seeing none, I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. Discussion? Councillor O'Brien.
If I may, Your Worship, just to make a comment on the contents of this application here. Anyways, I'm applauding the fact that the developer has applied for, under the city guidelines, the 28 affordable rental units in our community. I appreciate the fact that he's taken advantage of the rules as such as they are, and will be providing this as part of his plan. This is the way I like to see affordable housing happen in our community. This is developer driven, and it's going to provide a great need, or serve a great need anyways for our community. So I applaud that initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Reports. Mrs. Holmes. Would you please give us the background on employee and council travel expense reimbursement?
Good evening, thank you. Guidance with respect to reimbursement of travel expenses for council and staff is currently included in the Council Remuneration and Expenses Bylaw 1472, as well as a Staff Policy 7.6. This report discusses proposed changes to both of those documents, and the recommendations are per the agenda.
Thank you. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Mr. Doxey.
If I may, through your worship, this first report is for Foster Park Shelter and Power Kiosk. This is a project that came forward for memory purposes during budget time as a staff-led project that came forward. It was in conjunction with the Friends of Foster Park, as well as our park staff, and this part of the project was kind of led by the engineering department. And so at that time we were working from a budget of $85,000, and to facilitate the budget discussions, we talked about bringing back site concept plans, some options and some costs, which are enclosed in the report. You'll note that the recommended option comes in just $3,000 above the $85,000 budget. As you'll note, there were a couple different roof types and manufacturers that were selected for pricing points. So there were 3 locations that are illustrated in the attached report, as well as a couple of the shelter types. So there is a hip roof and a monoslope roof from one manufacturer, and the other manufacturer only carries a single slope or a monoslope roof with a different trade name, but effectively a single slope roof. So given the, I guess, allegiance towards conforming with our budgets as we proposed, we've made a recommendation that we proceed with the option for the option 1 as described, and that would be the precision steel single slope roof that's a 20-foot by 20-foot shelter at location 1, and then the amount of $54,000, and that's the option that comes in just over the budget amount of $85,000, or an increase of the budget of $3,000. The recommendations are as per the report.
Move the recommendation by Councillor Fraz, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Was that a, okay. Fair enough. Discussion? Councillor, yes, O'Brien. Rain front there.
Thank you, Your Worship, and if I may, through Your Worship, to Mr. Doxley. In the described background reports anyways, it referred to comments by the Foster Park Residents Association and so forth that had some bearing on this request for the shelter. I couldn't find any in mine. Mine today wasn't included in my package. I don't know if I just got missed out, but I wasn't missing any pages. So, but I can ask you right now here, if I may, a couple questions like, there's already an existing structure at Foster Park right now, the wooden structure. Has that ended its lifespan type of thing, and is that the location that is proposed in option 1?
No, I believe the existing structure is further over to the east per this illustration. So the existing gazebo would be further just east of the basketball playing surface, and I believe location 2. So that existing gazebo is over in that direction.
Issue a follow-up? And so then in that particular case, then there's going to be 2 buildings. There's going to be a picnic shelter and the gazebo that's going to be at the Foster Park location. Is that correct? Correct.
If I may, through Your Worship, that's correct.
And the question was being, as the residents of Foster Park, of the Foster Park group, have they been apprised of the possibility that Timberlake Jones has anyways proposed to it, and are they in approval of what has been recommended?
They haven't been apprised as such of what we're recommending. There may have been some informal communication through their engineering tech that's leading the project, but there's not been a formal, like a subcommittee meeting and a sign-off per se.
And one further follow-up, if I may, Your Worship. And this particular location is in the Foster Park, so what it's going to do is give a picnic shelter, a new and improved picnic shelter in this area. At some time anyways, we spoke to city actually administering costs anyways for exclusive use if somebody wanted to book the picnic shelter for say a wedding reception or something like that, that there could be a costs applicable to this type of thing, not just for the general use of the Foster Park group, like their Halloween walk and so forth. You know, that's not going to be a factor here. But anyone that wants to have exclusivity for a date, then we have the option then of possibly charging a fee for service type of thing.
If I may, through Your Worship, yes, we could in the future. We're not set up right now to charge. We don't charge a fee for any of the sign-outs for picnic shelters and whatnot in the community park, and that's part of the rationale behind expanding the usage. Is our community park is becoming full, and some of the uses for the picnic shelters in that park are becoming vehicle intensive, using up a lot of parking, and so some of the rationale behind expanding and building at this pavilion at the Foster Park is to take some of that pressure off of the community park.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Worship. I have a couple questions, if I may indulge. Thank you. So this is close to the electrical site as well. So future use of, say, a range or lighting or any electrical needs could be used under the picnic shelter area? That's my question. First one.
If I may, through your worship, yes, I believe so. I don't know all the nuances of the electrical, the kiosk, but yes, that's the intention, is that the power would be made available for the picnic pavilion.
Is there lighting currently in that area?
If I may, through your worship, I'm not actually certain. I'd have to get that information and come back to you with that kind of detail.
And then my last one, proposed construction time frame, and when would this, if approved, be constructed?
The construction timeline, pardon my, don't have the specific starting date, but this, I believe it was a 6 to 8 weeks thereabouts ordering window for the pavilions, and so construction could commence after that, providing award timing and on our end. So
It won't be ready this summer. Any other questions? Bothers me at only a $3,000 overage on the budget, by the way, only. So call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Mr. Doxey, next one.
if I may, through your worship, so this one does not follow as tightly close to the budget as the previous one. So
It's
now
not
having
even close.
So having called out the elephant in the room, this project was commenced in 2017 from an engineering standpoint. It took a bit of a sidebar with the development at 151 in order to coordinate the installation of the services and works and utilities with some of the connecting works from the 151 project. As such, we're now at we've made it through budget season, and what we've seen is some pressures on pricing coming through the organization. So we have tendered McKinnon and Wallace and projects also earlier this year that closed about a month ago. Those having come in over budget, we, along with these pricing pressures, we wanted to make sure that we weren't awarding a number of projects in the maximum highest inflated cost that we could. And so we elected to hold off on those reports from McKinnon and Wallace until we saw how Moss closed. So Moss now closing high, we have, what we're suggesting is that we defer McKinnon and Wallace and to reevaluate in the 5-year long-range financial plan, but that because we have so much vested into Moss right now with the development adjacent and with the initial servicing work already done for the latter portion of 151, that this project should be, we're recommending that it be done and completed, and the resolution, or the recommendations are as per the report.
Thank you. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Wilson, second by Councillor Greer. I'm going to step in first, only if I can, because is it my understanding you're $1 million off on your budget?
If I may, yes, sir.
I have a real problem with approving something that's $1 million short on its budget for Moss Avenue. I think we need to go back before we agree to spend that kind of money and look at the standards that we're putting on that street and find out if in fact we can do this at in a less costly way. so that we can bring that closer to the budget. I understand that we've had some price increases and all the things that we hear, but $1 million, my God, that's 1/13 of our budget, and I have a real hard time with that. So that's my comment. Any other comments? Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would agree as well. I think we should defer this until we have a further study on it. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Till September, do we do our budget again? Into October?
Sorry. Councillor Chandler seconded it. Okay, now we can have the conversation. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So through you to Director of Engineering, Joe, this project, what would it mean if we deferred the project for until October, September, October?
If I may, through your worship, the most obvious would be there's probably a quarter of the road right now is in a gravelized state. And so until we get I guess an approved budget or a contract to either finish the underground utility renewal or an approved contract to close the road, to pave it, it would be staying in a gravelized state.
If I may, Your Worship, just my comment being, I personally feel that this should be completed as presented tonight, because I think it has to be done in a timely manner, just for the very reasons that Mr. Doxey's just pointed out, the fact that this job has been started and it hasn't been finished, and it has to be done timely to tie in with all the other services in the immediate area. I believe that the real danger here is not only, yes, I agree that the budget is way up higher than what we had planned for, but I believe that is also the new reality. I also fear that by delaying it further, when it goes out to tender again, say in September, October, if it happens that quick, which I'd be very surprised at, that the pricing is indeed going to be even higher than what is proposed right here. That the bid by NAPIT Industries in this particular case. So I feel, my own personal feeling is that we should give them the go-ahead to greenlight this as right in, get it done, because we started, we got to finish it, and instead of inconveniencing all the people that live on the street already and all the construction, the travel patterns around in that area, as well as I appreciate the reflection of delaying McKinnon Street and Wallace Street projects until for future budget deliberations.
Any other comments? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. To Director of Engineering, some of the projects that we're going to delay, that money that would have been spent, could that not be applied to this and offset it, or is this still way over the budget?
If I may, through your worship, the two projects would offset the cost for this year. It wouldn't get those costs. They're effectively a liability that still sits on the city's financial books, if you will. So they're effectively identifying infrastructure that it is aging and does need to be renewed, and so deferring them doesn't actually facilitate that renewal. It still needs to happen. It might need to happen in 3 years or 2 years or 5 years. But that still sits on the books. What we're kind of hoping to do is, at best, if there is a localized regional high spot in construction pricing, that we might buffer some of that out, and we'll still have to fund it in the future, but we would hope to maybe miss some of the high spots in construction cost pricing.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Director Doxey. The McKinnon Street and Wallace Street projects, when were they on the books for?
If I may, through your worship, they were on the books for this year for construction. They were actually carried over from last year and finished this year.
But they're not in a state of construction at this point in time.
If I
Is
may,
that
through your
correct?
worship, no, they're not. They're both. They haven't had any. There's no development pressures on them, and they don't have any recent surface failures or any issues currently.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Through your worship, to Director of Engineering. Joe, can you tell me what is going on right now with Moss? Are the underground utilities in, or at what stage? So if it's left, you've got a figure of about $200,000 here to correct it and put it back, but it seems to me it might be more feasible to go forward with it right now.
If I may, through your worship. So right now, the storm sewer had to be constructed from McKillop, and coming out of the 151 development, it tied into the storm system at McKillop and Moss, and then it was required to do some upsizing of the storm sewer along the eastern throws of Moss. So from McKillop to Moss is all dug up and gravelized. As part of that work, we had some water infrastructure that was also upgraded that the city undertook with the developer, with Napa Construction back, I believe that was approved back in the fall. And so effectively some water services and repairs were also done as part of that same initial work from McKillop to Craig on Moss.
Councillor O'Brien. Then
If
I'm
I-
going to step in.
If I may, through your worship anyways, to Mr. Doxey, I noticed that rejecting the bids in the background information on page 117 suggests that if the bids are rejected, it could result in higher future bids and or deter contractors from bidding on future projects. Rejecting the bids would require us to restore a portion of Moss Avenue because it's a mess right now, and to disturb the utility work that's already been started by this development. So we'd have to like put a temporary patch on this until we decide what's going on. So we're going to have to go to a cost of between $150,000 to $200,000 to put a Band-Aid on this particular situation just to make it so that it's usable in the meantime. So we're going to drop 200 grand on this thing just to say, well, you know, we're going to go looking for a bid later. And I know how these bid projects work, and I know how these contractors feel too. If they've gone through all the process of putting through a bid to the city, which is a considerable amount of time and effort for all these contractors, if they say now, oh, this was all just for naught, they've wasted their time, and in this particular case, they're going to be put on the back burner, and then there's going to be a new RFP come out that's going to be considerably more money, or considerably different than the original plan was. So it could very well come in much more, or if you don't get any bids at all, and then that's the worst situation at all, because then the sky's the limit. So that's why I really feel that this project should go through now. Thank you.
I actually am taking the totally opposite side of that argument, in the fact that if we go to these people and tell them that we're way over budget and that we are going to look at alternatives as to how to bring this budget in line. For example, we've had some preliminary conversations that we don't have to be building all of our streets to downtown Toronto, curbs and gutters and sidewalks and everything else on the streets. Maybe we just need gravel shoulders and and paved roads in most of these, on the secondary roads around town. And that should cut the cost of this down substantially by looking at that. As far as McKinnon and Wallace, that's kind of like saying you're going to not pay your hydro bill so you can pay your rent this month. At some point in time in the next month or so, or in the next year or 2 years or 5 years, we're going to have to pay that bill, and that bill is going to be higher than it is now. So delaying it is not really the answer. What we need to do is, maybe we're just asking for too much to be done on the dollars and cents that we have here. And so we need to be looking at this in a more reasonable manner. And we talked about it, and I'll go back to it one more time. We need to be looking at secondary streets being different than the primary streets that we have in and around the city. And that's the way I look at it. And we probably won't save the whole $1 million, but I think we could save a significant amount of this by changing the standards that we're working with on this. And, you know, that doesn't have to even, we can do that before we even get to the budgeting process if we so desire. We can do that ahead of time by just saying, what's it going to cost to do this? And then put it out for a tender. Yes, the guy that was going to get it, but believe me, they've got all these costs built into this price. There's no doubt in my mind that this happens on a regular basis around all municipal and all government tendering processes. So it's all built into this. I believe that we need to look at this and we need to go back to the table. So, you may.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I may follow up to your comments. My comments about to try and downgrade the system to one to save costs, and it doesn't all have to be #1 standard. I have difficulty. I'm also the liaison for the Oceanside Accessibility organization here in our town. They deplore gravel streets and the fact that this would, you're suggesting that perhaps the sidewalks could be replaced by gravel shoulders and so forth. I have a real difficult time with that because the thing is that the gravel is not conducive to safe pedestrian access through these areas. Parksville is all growing up, and I believe that the people with walking and disability issues have as much right to walk on every street in this city and not be precluded from passing in a safe way that happens on gravel shoulders. So I feel that the standard that Mr. Doxey has prescribed is not luxurious. I believe it's just a standard that's accepted in today's world with the all access to everyone. Thank you.
We've beat this up pretty good, so I'll call the question. All those in favor of deferring, because that's the issue that's on, deferring until the fall? All those in favor? Opposed? 4 to 3. It's carried. Mr. Doxey, next one, please.
If I may, through your worship, the next one is Despard Avenue resurfacing. This is a staff proposed project that effectively deals with the south side of Despard. You'll note that the north side of Despard is being constructed or upgraded consistent with the frontage improvements that are required by development. As such, the south side of the road is effectively chip seal right now, and it's starting to wear with the construction activity, but furthermore, it will make a better driving surface universally for the road to have it upgraded to an asphalt overlay on that side, and this report contemplates that. So it's just right at about $100,000, $90,000, and about $7,000 for construction staking and QA, QC inspection and testing and things like that. So the reports recommendations are as per the report. If there's any questions.
I need a mover and a seconder for the motions, for the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Greer, second by Councillor Wilson. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Mr. Moody, would you please give us a background on communication services vendor selection?
Thank you, Your Worship. In regards to our communication services at the city, for 15 years or so, the city has been without a communications contract, and our current provider, TELUS, has been giving us rates that are not conducive to our budget. We went to an RFP process on May 15th, looking for a 5-year contract for better rates, and we have received quotes back, and we are recommending that TELUS be the preferred vendor for this contract, with a savings of approximately $17,677 per year. And the recommendations are as per the report.
Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Fraz, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Comments? So just so I understand that TELUS was charging us $17,000 more before we put it out for bids. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other comments? Councillor Wilson.
Through you, Your Worship, who were the other vendors that came through?
Through Your Worship, the other vendors were the Access Data Group and Shaw Communications.
Any other questions? I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Mr. Moody, I believe you have another one.
Thank you, Your Worship. For several years, the city has been using Microsoft software, and we have not had consistent versioning throughout the organization, leading to various inefficiencies in the organization. And we've done an analysis and looked at moving to the Microsoft 365 platform to standardize all of our Microsoft desktop and server-based software. In order to do that, we would have to go into a three-year enterprise agreement with Microsoft Corporation, and we are looking at approximately $1,096 more per year to do that. Fortunately, with the enterprise agreement, there is an additional $6,000 of training vouchers that are given back to the city, and there's a huge amount of benefits. If you've all read the details on the back of the report in the appendix, it will take me an hour to go through to explain it all. But we're looking at gaining staff efficiencies through the standardization of the software. Just alone in my IT department, I've estimated between 70 and 100 hours of staff time a year savings just by having standardized software so we can do efficient imaging of workstations.
I need a mover and a seconder for the recommended. Moved by Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Greer. Discussion? Councillor Patterson?
So please bear with me because I am probably the least technical type person on council. But when I was looking at the general benefits and OneDrive storage, so the 1 TB per user and looking at about 95 users. Now, would that cover all of the city employees that would use this benefit through Microsoft? I'm not sure if that's the correct terminology, but...
If I may, through your worship, every user that logs into our network has a license that you use. We'd be going to a user-based license instead of a device-based license for those that have like a computer at their desktop. Does that answer the question? Yeah, okay.
Councillor Chandler?
Through your worship, to Director of IT, I just wondered in the amount of licenses that you have available, you said 95, I think, and is there any space to sell any of those off, or do we need all those? I guess that would be the first question.
If I may, through your worship, yes, we would need all those licenses. Yeah.
Follow-up it is.
Through your worship again to Director of IT, just question in regards to, is there any savings for us to be looking at outward to other communities like Qualicum and seeing what they're doing and seeing if they're ready for a switch and if that could impact us cost savings for us? Is that, you know, potentially putting both locations together and realizing we have to run our own software and so on, but is there any reason that we wouldn't maybe look at that? Or
If I may, through your worship, every organization that deals with Microsoft has to deal with them on an individual basis. However, the cost savings that Microsoft gives to government organizations is negotiated through the province of British Columbia. They have select and enterprise agreements, and they say for local governments of this size, they'll give certain pricing breaks, but we don't all gang up together and get that all together, but the province has dealt with Microsoft at that level.
Seeing no other questions, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Weeks, would you please give us the background on 440 Craig Street?
So the property at 440 Craig Street has been the subject of multiple complaints requiring attendance by the RCMP and bylaw staff. Staff are seeking council approval to deem the property a nuisance under the city's nuisance abatement bylaw. So declaring the property to be a nuisance permits council to recover some of the costs associated with repeated attendance by emergency and bylaw resources, and the recommendations are as per the council agenda.
Moved by Councillor Fraz, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Discussion? I think Councillor Wilson deserves credit for this one, for bringing it to our attention way back.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I just want to say that, of course, I drive down Craig all the time. And one of the trailers has been gone thanks to the hard work of our bylaw. And yet there's still another one there and another car, and it's pretty nasty. So, yeah.
All right. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Perhaps directed to Mrs. Weeks. The property resident, is that the property owner? Are we aware?
I believe so. Yes, I'm getting nods.
We're getting nods from the other side of the room. Any other questions? Let's call it then. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you very much. I have a question. I'm sorry, just a technical, I guess. Do we have to give them 30 days notice? That's by law. It's required. Would you let me know tomorrow? Okay, thanks. Mrs. Weeks, would you please give us the background on Parksville Downtown Business Improvement petition?
So in June of this year, the city undertook a local area service petition process on behalf of the PDBA to determine the level of support for renewal of the business improvement area and to raise required funds for associated activities for the term January 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2024. A total of 235 petitions were distributed. In accordance with the community charter, in order for the petition to be certified as sufficient and valid, the petition must be signed by the owners of at least 50% of the parcels that would be subject to the local service tax. Of the 235 properties petitioned, 32 petitions were returned. Of those petitions returned, only 21 were deemed to be sufficient and valid. As this does not meet the 50% threshold required by the community charter, staff's recommendations is as per the council agenda.
I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Wilson, second by Councillor Greer. Discussion? Councillor Fraz? Sure. All right. Nobody else? All right. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Mrs. Weeks, the annual report.
So in accordance with the community charter, municipalities prepare an annual report which provides a snapshot of goals and accomplishments from 2018. It includes reports from the mayor, the CAO, as well as financial information, permissive tax exemption information, and department highlights. The annual report has been available for public inspection since June 28th, and staff's recommendation is per the council agenda.
I need a mover and a seconder for the report to be received. Moved by Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next. Council Contingency Fund Policy Number 2.9. Council reconsideration of an amendment to the Council Contingency Fund Policy Number 2.9 to permit council members access to funding for electronic devices. The policy is presented as originally presented on July 3rd, 2019, council meeting agenda with no additional amendments. I need a mover and a seconder for the move by Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Wilson. I'm going to read my notes here, if you will, just so that we can talk about this. I'd like to spend a little bit of time here laying out the status of this situation before we go into a discussion. I'm not at this point supporting a side or a view, but merely trying to lay out all of the facts. During our budget, the original budget proposals were that $1,000 per elected official per term be allocated for the purchase of electronic equipment for their use. This would be paid for from the Council Contingency Fund. Councillors O'Brien and Greer put forward the resolution to remove this amount. Then Councillor Fraz made the resolution, and seconded by Councillor O'Brien, to reimburse up to a total of $7,000 per term for electronic devices based upon receipts. This was withdrawn, then it gets complicated. This was withdrawn, and then Councillor Fraz made the resolution, and seconded by Councillor O'Brien, that staff draft a policy to use the contingency fund to reimburse elected officials up to $1,000 per term for electronic devices based upon receipts. This was carried. Staff, following the direction of this resolution, has drafted the necessary policy to lay out the intent of the original resolution. Having said that, once the motion comes to the floor, Council may handle it in a number of ways. It can accept it as written, it can be amended, or it can be defeated. If it is defeated, then the original resolution made by Council to a total of $7,000 is in fact what they call orphaned, but it is still relevant unless rescinded by Council, even though it is not part of the city's policy. So it's orphaned is the terminology because it is a resolution, but it doesn't have a policy to support that resolution. Without policy, staff do not have any policy to follow. They are merely governed by a statement that if a member of council provides receipts for an electronic device to any staff, they are to be reimbursed for the money that from the contingency fund. We need to specify how it is to be handled by staff, or the original resolution needs to be rescinded. We cannot leave it hanging out there on its own without a policy to support it. As it stands, council can change this resolution without any resolution, with another resolution, or rescind it. As it stands, council can change this, oh, I think I wrote the same thing twice, sorry, without any resolution or rescind it. I suppose you could do nothing, but then there is no policy to advise staff how to handle the request for the reimbursement from a member of council. The first step tonight is to vote on reconsideration of last meeting's motion number 19-267. If it is passed and the majority of council agree to reconsider the motion, then we will bring the motion back to the floor for debate, and all aspects of handling the motion will be applicable. The motion being reconsidered as per Councillor O'Brien is that the amended Council Contingency Fund Policy 2.9 as attached to the July 3rd, 2019 Council meeting agenda be approved and the corporate policy manual be updated accordingly. If it is defeated, then I would entertain a motion to rescind or change the original resolution. We must put this to bed tonight and move on. So I'm asking for a seconder to Councillor O'Brien's motion to reconsider the defeated motion from the last meeting. I'm sorry, that was a long and convoluted discussion, but it's the way it was. Seconded by Councillor Wilson. Discussion. The motion is now on the floor.
Thank you, Your Worship, for that excellent interpretation. I appreciate it. I believe that this is a fair motion to process and make it as policy as per the recommendation by staff. This was the amount that council agreed to propose in our budget deliberations. This is the amount that we thought that we were allocating into it, and this is the amount that should go into the policy book. It is a fair amount, and I believe it is a fair motion. So I will definitely be supporting as is. Thank you.
Just a point of order here. We're just discussing the approval or of reconsideration at this point in time. Sorry. That was right back in the first line, so it wasn't so clear. But that's what we have to do. We have to vote to whether we reconsider it, and then we will vote on the motion. Okay? So the reconsideration. Any other comments? Make a motion or call the question of whether to reconsider the motion. In favor? Opposed? It's carried. Okay, thank you. Now, we have it. I need a mover and a seconder for the motion to come back to the floor, if you would. Sorry, but that's the way it's got to be. So, Councillor O'Brien, it's your motion. It's coming. I need a seconder.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to make the motion on the floor right now that elected officials are permitted to access up to $1,000 each from council contingency per term of council for reimbursement of electronic devices for council business. Reimbursement would be based on receipts being submitted and approved by the Chief Administration Officer, and as well that the corporation policy manual be updated accordingly.
You just added a few more words. So it's fine. I'm just joking. All right. And seconded by Councillor Wilson. Discussion. That's awful quiet. I thought this was going to be a long discussion. All right, then I'll call the question. All those in favor of the opposed? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Third readings. Plan Parksville Amendment Bylaw 2019, number 1492, map, oops, I'm sorry, did I miss it? I don't, no? Oh, sorry. Yeah, putting it on two sides is confusing for me. Three readings. Council Remuneration and Expense Amendment Bylaw 2019, number 1472.4 to amend travel expense regulations. And number 2 is bylaw business improvement area established bylaw number 2019 number 1556, a bylaw to establish a downtown business improvement area. Are we still covering number 2? Okay. So I need a mover and a seconder for both those. Moved by Councillor Greer, second by Councillor Fraz. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, now I can go back to where I was. Plan Parksville Amendment Bylaw 2019, number 1492.4, map amendment to multi-use residential at 375, 379, 383, and 385 Molliette South. And then zoning and development amendment bylaw number 2019, number 2000.125, map amendment to residential high density RHD-4 for 375, 379, 383, 385 Molliette Street South. I need a mover and a seconder for that recommendation. Moved by Councillor Chandler, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. Any discussion? Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to read, so need a few minutes for this. Thank you. I would like to read this, so I'll need a few minutes here. All right. So I just wanted to say I'm voting in opposition to this OCP amendment and voting in support of the impacted residents and to uphold the intent of Parksville's OCP that states developments are designed in a manner that is sensitive to the natural environment and enhance the small town character of the community. I appreciate that the district group amended the setbacks, but the fact remains that the change in zoning from transitional to RHD4 adjacent to a well-established neighborhood of single-family homes is inappropriate with the current surrounding RS1 and RS3 zones, and I feel it is unfair to the residents who purchased their homes in good faith. Most importantly are the residents' concerns, especially those who took the time to write to council and to express their opposition at the July 3rd public hearing about the many negative ways in which this OCP amendment poses to their quality of life, lack of privacy, with four-story apartments up to 49.2 feet towering into their backyards, creating shade, blocking sunlight, noise and light pollution, traffic congestion, safety, insufficient parking at one space per unit, infrastructure, water consumption, and additional load on stormwater management, as per the engineer's report. The development is located a considerable distance from the center of town in a car-dependent neighborhood. In addition, this development is located in a very busy corridor with close direct access from the inland and Alberni highways, Trillium Lodge, the Oceanside Health Center, Springwood Middle School, the dog park, and the soon-to-be installed pickleball courts and a large community of single-family homes. I asked Council a few months ago to consider how they would feel should this scenario happen in their backyard, and I am asking again today to consider the direct impact that this development will have on the residents and to consider the consequences of allowing this extreme amendment to our OCP. It is worth considering that if this council can make a decision which will negatively affect residents in future, another council could allow this to happen in your neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, discussion? Close your eyes. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries. Third reading and final adoption, zoning and development amendment bylaw 2019, number 2000.124, map amendment to highway commercial CS1, 395 Island Highway East, zoning and development amendment bylaw 2019, number 2000.126, correction of map error at 249 Finholm. Before we go, Council, at this time, I'd like to make a note that the purpose of this bylaw is simply to correct a mapping error. The public hearing was waived for this particular bylaw under the provisions of Local Government Act, and the adoption of this bylaw is largely a housekeeping issue. We're not changing anything. Recommendations. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Chandler, second by Councillor Greer. Discussions? All those in favor? Opposed? And it's carried. Thank you. Final adoption, housing agreement authorization bylaw 2019, number 1554, housing agreement authorization bylaw for 151 Despard Avenue West. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Wilson, second by Councillor Greer. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Notice of motions. We have a whack of them tonight, so we'll go through them one at a time. Councillor Chandler, I believe you have the first one. Your notice of motion.
Yes. So this is in regards to notice of motion.
Could you use your mic, please?
Clearing of community parks. After listening to staff present information about the configuration of Marks Park, difficulty in creating sight lines because of the distance from the road, I would like to amend the motion to remove clearing from Marks Park and reduce the budget amount from $15,000 to $10,000 to enable clearing of Cedar Ridge Park, sorry. So that is an amendment to the original.
It's your motion, so you can do that. And seconded by Councillor Fraz. Any discussion? I'm sorry, I've got this marked at the top of my, is a notice of motion. This is a motion, right? This is already, yeah, so it's, and this is a motion. I thought it was supposed to fall under new business, but okay, we'll argue that out tomorrow. All right, discussion. Councillor Chandler, then Councillor O'Brien, Councillor Fraz.
So through your worship, just a comment in regards to Warren's very well put together program as far as the impact that the area would see. I felt it was really well put together. The other thing that I've been in there a couple of times and looked and essentially where the camping was being done was in the far corner. It wasn't really available to be seen by the street so easily as we would have thought. And so the one thing is bylaw had done a fantastic job in getting in there and dealing with making sure people moved out of there as they were supposed to. So, I mean, the real complexity of it is that it's a park that people want to use and walk their dogs in and so on. And we totally understand the other side of it where people are going to be staying in there, and we get that. But I think that, you know, if everybody's abiding by the law and the rules, then I think I'm pretty happy with the way it's gone lately here. It looks like things have sort of stabilized in there. So that's my reason for pulling out the amendment or the original motion. Thank you.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you. If I may, Your Worship, I would redirect my question to Councillor Chandler. I missed, I guess, the part regarding you were advising that there was. Could you reread? So you're suggesting that your motion you're presenting is not as in the package here. That you are amending that motion. Could you reread your amended motion, please?
Through your worship to Councillor O'Brien. So my amended motion is, after listening to the staff to present information about the configuration of Marks Park, the difficulty in creating sight lines because of the distance from the road, I would like to amend the motion to remove clearing in Marks Park and reduce the budget amount from $15,000 to $10,000 to enable clearing of Cedar Ridge Park.
And if I may, Your Worship, do a follow-up to that? Thank you very much, Councillor Chandler. That clears things up. You're suggesting that the Cedar Ridge Park would still be treated under the SEPTED concepts and so forth. I'm not completely clear as what that consists of. I was clear of what was proposed on the original motion to Marks Park, but I do not know what it is. Is it a complete brush and underbrush removal in the Cedar Ridge Park, or is it a reduced? I feel that we don't have enough information as to what you're actually proposing here, is what I'm saying. I understand Mark's been pulled, but I don't understand what you are actually proposing for the lower bluff area of Cedar Ridge Park, and thus I haven't actually had a chance to do a site attendance to actually see what you're proposing, because I didn't know what that was. So unless you can give me a detailed analysis of what's going to happen or what is proposed, and I would suggest that that's probably what Mr. Payne would be proposing to meet your requirements. I'm not sure that I could vote one way or the other respectfully without knowing the terms of exactly what's going to happen. Unless Mr. Payne is in attendance here or you have that information, I would suggest we table this motion until we have that information. That's my feeling. I am asking to have it tabled, yes, Your Worship.
Thank you, Your Worship. Do we have any staff in attendance that can answer any of the questions Councillor O'Brien is bringing forward? Can I ask for some clarification from Kelly?
just getting clarification of what you're asking for.
If I may, through your worship, through Kelly, my intention would be to understand what the brush or the limbing or the clearing, as I understand by Councillor Chandler's remarks, that to clear the sight lines. In the affected area, the Cedar Ridge area. That's what I would be needing clarification on. Clearing sight lines to me is like, okay, we're just going to clear cut everything so that we can see from here all the way to Nanaimo, if that's the case. So the thing is that I'm a little worried about that because it's going to remove a lot of very valuable underbrush anyways that actually protects the irrigation. I've already gone through that, you know it all. But the thing is that, that if that's what that entails, if it means clearing the sight lines and clearing it all the way through, then I have direct objections to that. If we don't have that information and actually the exact location in the Cedar Ridge, because Cedar Ridge is a pretty big area. I know kind of the trail area, but I don't know exactly what, does it mean the entire trail and so forth. So with that in mind, I think that I should be deferring, as you say, tabling, yeah. Yeah, I would be deferring this to a later date anyways to get that information and to do site visits or to table it as you see fit, table it to a different date. Okay. Yeah. Right, okay, then I would suggest then that we defer it to a later date until we have all the information that we need. We would defer it until the September 2nd meeting. Is it September 2nd?
Deferring it doesn't give us more information. It just means we talk about it again later.
But by that time, we've gathered the information. Okay, it's just on the deferring.
I could, through the mayor, perhaps Councillor O'Brien, this would just give you a little more information there. With the Cedar Ridge Park, the trail where those trees were cut down, there was about, I think, $46,000 of damage of trees cut down. The other side of the trail, there's a lot of hiding spots in there. My hope would be that it wouldn't be cleared out, but that some of those hiding spots would be thinned out so that if you're in the bushes off the side of the trail, you're visible to anyone walking on the trail. Because currently there has been a lot of activity going in there, and last time that I went in there, there was, like I mentioned before, there was people smoking inside there and surrounded in a little dense, dead bush. It was just all dried out bush. So if they were to thin that out, then I think it would remove the chance of them hiding there and the danger of them smoking in that kind of dried area. But I would definitely be in favor of keeping like the vegetation that's providing shade and moisture to the ground that's right on the trail side. But you know, dead underbrush that's in there, it's not the trees, the limbing, but it's just literally bushes. And so I'd hope that's what would come out of the clearing as far as clearing goes, just thinning it.
Thank you, Worship. Just a comment. And I think we all really appreciated Warren's information. I think it was very good. I realize, you know, if we were going ahead with stuff, it'd be more of a soft clearing than a full underbrush and full clearing situation. I think we'd all sort of really talked about that last time, that, you know, we respect the employees of the city and what they bring to us and the information that they best have at hand and the information they feel to be the best for both the parks and the city and so on. So I would say that ultimately we know that something's going to be done there, but I think that there was always a thought that it'd be a more soft approach than because of there was definitely some feedback that it was going to be a problem if it wasn't. So,
if I may, Your Worship, and thank you for the additional information from Councillor Fraz and Councillor Chandler. That it clears up to what your intentions are. My further comment would be that where does this stop? I mean, really, I mean, we're just clearing out one little bush area of natural growth where the sight lines are unclear and these teenagers can hang out and grab a smoke or whatever they're going to do, and they're being teenagers. I can name you probably 100 more sites in this town within city limits anyways that have very obscured sight lines. So if we do the soft approach, even as you suggest, and clear these sight lines, they're just going to move on somewhere else because they're teenagers. I mean, weren't you once? The thing is that really it's just going to move on to a different location. So the thing is, unless we're going to go on every trail area in the city of Parksville and do a sightline removal, the thing is that there's always going to be an area where kids hang out. I mean, I can walk you to 100 of them tomorrow. So I understand what you're doing, and I appreciate the fact that you're going to do a soft removal. But the thing is that if we just take it from here, they're just going to go over here because that's the way it goes. So I think that it's your intentions are good, but I believe that it's you just entered into the never-ending story. So that's my feelings. I think it's an overreaction is what I'm getting at. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson, and then I will comment.
Thank you, through your worship. I do have the notes from Warren here with me. Would they be of any help?
I don't think so.
No? Well, I have to agree with Warren's assessment that where does it end? And so I am concerned about this endless clearing of bush. I think it's one of those situations where it's really hard to figure out what to do, but perhaps just more bylaw might be the answer.
Thank you. My thinking here is that we know it's an issue. The neighbors have complained about it, and it's not just teenagers, it's other people staying there overnight. So if we know it's an issue, we have a responsibility to eliminate that problem. My concern is yes, smoking in there for teenagers, yeah, we've all done it, and all the other things that we've all done as teenagers. This isn't a teenager problem. This could be a safety problem. It's right beside the pathway. People can be hiding in there. There could be all kinds of issues, safety, security type issues if we want to make it that way. But for a simple process of limiting this and taking out the shrubs, I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill. We've spent copious amount of time on this, discussing it to death, and for what it's going to take and for the potential of damage to anything, the amount of risk is minuscule by comparison. So in my mind, I think that we should just do this area, get it done, and move on to it. So that's my view. And if nobody, Councillor Chandler, and then I'm going to wrap it up because everybody's had 2 or 3 shots at this, and it's just going around in circles.
I just have one final comment, and I think the limited limbing and clearing, and I think some more bylaw enforcement into that area, I think is a really good combination that would work for this process rather than going one way or the other in a heavy state. So.
And I think what we can do is put the onus on this gentleman right here and say, do minimal, but make it effective, and is what we can do with his staff. And I think these people are well-trained, they know what they're doing, and we can handle it from there. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Greer, would you like to introduce the next motion? Oh, yeah, okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is also a motion. It's not a notice of motion.
I know.
The motion is that staff be directed to undertake consultation with School District 69, Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, Parksville District Chamber of Commerce, the Oceanside Development and Construction Association, and the Regional District of Nanaimo regarding the concept of facilitating an affordable housing development for families on the city-owned property located at 130 Shelley Road.
Seconded. Discussion? Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. Question through to Councillor Greer. I was having difficulty finding this. Councillor Frass and I had a sidebar discussion here, and he was suggesting that this is not where the old Public Works garage was. This is further on down. I tried Google mapping it. I couldn't find it, so that's why I'm unsure. But so this is, as pointed out to me, is a bare lot. If you can describe roughly what that lot is, Mr. Councillor Greer, I'd be appreciative.
Yeah, it's just a shrub land, some trees, some bush, and so on, and there's a high part, and then it tapers down into the floodplain. So it's right at the end of that street. And I believe it's 12 acres. Is it 12 acres? A total of 12 acres. So, but there's enough high ground there to do something with.
Just let me interject for just a second. There's a house on that piece of property that we own as well, and that would be part of it. My guess is there's probably about 4 acres of buildable land on that site for us. The rest of the land would not be touched. It's just going to be down by the river and down by the estuary.
Thank you. As a follow-up, then, if I may, I believe I'm on your same page now. So this is where, you remember where the water intake was? Where the pub
yes.
Parks, they used the road behind the gate there to get down to it. That is that land there that you're considering?
No, I don't think it is. I think that area is over further to the south or east, I guess.
Okay. So I'm getting where you're at anyways.
Yeah.
And so it would be you're considering putting this through for a proposal for affordable housing, but to be determined, you're not definitive as to Habitat for Humanity or are you thinking BC Housing?
Nothing yet, but we just want to make it available.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. To Councillor Greer, how long has this land been vacant, or have we owned it?
I have no idea how long we've owned it, but it's vacant except for this house. There's an old house at one end of it, which would be, if we ever develop it and whatever, then that house would go.
Any other questions? Councillor Chandler?
Through your worship to Councillor Greer, would this be a good site for potentially for co-op housing? Would that be something you would consider in this?
Hold on for a second, just as a point of order, is our job tonight is to talk about the rezoning, is not to talk about specific uses because there is no planned specific use.
Gotcha.
Okay, at this time, so we're just multi-residential, multi-use residential is what we're asking for the zoning because that's the best possible use for that land. And it's kitty corner to an existing piece of property that's owned the same. That's why we're looking at this. And then once it's rezoned, then we can make a decision as to what we would do with it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have explained, clarified for me what I didn't understand. Thank you.
There you go. All right. So, in order to proceed with this, all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you very much. I have your motion that's on that you wanted to bring.
Through your mayor to council. This was one that I was going to put forward earlier when the Oceanside Community Safety folks were in. I think one of the things council has been confirmed its priorities in a strategic.
Whoa. Give us the motion, please. And then we need the motion.
Oh, I was told that was a way to approach it first, because I need to ask for an actual motion as opposed to a notice of motion.
You're doing a motion because it was already distributed to everybody on council.
Gotcha.
So it's a motion,
Okay.
so just go to it.
Okay, so the motion is that council approve a grant to the Oceanside Community Safety Volunteers in the amount of $5,000 to be funded by Council Contingency Fund, subject to the group providing the following information to staff. Confirmation that the OCS is a registered nonprofit society. Indication of broad community support in the group's activities. Confirmation the society is participating volunteers from the city of Parksville. Demonstration of financial need for the group funding to support specific program or project, and confirmation that the group is not solely dependent on the city's funds to continue operating. Details of other financial support, a detailed annual budget outlining revenues and expenditures, financial statements from the 2018 fiscal year, and an overview of the benefits of the program will provide to the citizens if funding is approved.
I need a seconder for that motion. Second by Councillor Fraz. Discussion. Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I made a motion back on April the 15th that we would carry on with the grant and aid program, but we would donate no other monies. However, I am a supporter of this program, and what I would suggest and how we get around this, because we do have to get around it somehow, is that we make it a line item and have it carried on through in the next budget.
I think that was the intent of it here for this one. So, any other discussion? Councillor O'Brien.
If I may, Your Worship, echo somewhat to what Councillor Greer has just mentioned anyways, that we would have to consider everything that Councillor Chandler has put forth in his motion, but it would be best suited to consideration in the budget, next budget format, which is going to fall in September, if I'm not correct. Is that correct? October, yeah, this fall. So that is fine. I too recognize the fact that we made the agreement that we wouldn't allocate any extra funding other than grants and aid. So this would take care of that. I would be in favor of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Just the one thing I wanted to point out was it is, you know, the priorities in the strategic planning process, and I think it's very important that we all view this as one of the top priorities, and I appreciate the support I'm hearing so far. And you know, basically the city, citizens of the city, I don't think would want to wait until September, October to make this happen. So I think if we can make this happen during this meeting, that would be fantastic, and get these people on the road and on bikes and doing their thing. I think it'd be really good. Thank you.
Yeah, I would support the idea, and maybe somehow, I don't know how we get around the motion that I had made earlier, but maybe we could give you the 5,000 now and and call it an inline item and continue it on in our next budget. But I would suggest that we get on with it if that's what everybody wants.
Any other discussion? All right, I'm going to call the question for Councillor Chandler's motion. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Now, Councillor Wilson, would you like to introduce your motion?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to make a motion that all future council meetings be held in the forum at the Parksville Civic and Technology Center to facilitate web streaming and video archiving.
Thank you, Your Worship. I go back to other meetings when we decided that we should be more transparent with the public and go in different areas. And I thought the school presentation was always excellent. Unfortunately, we didn't have too many at the church, but I think it's good to get out into the community on a couple of occasions. Thanks.
Councillor Chandler and then Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Worship. Again, just a comment, but I think doing maybe some committee of the whole meetings out, more informal type meetings in the churches and places like that, I think would be really worthwhile, talking about specific items. But I think that we definitely noticed that there was problems with the speaker system at the church, and They even had issues at the school itself, but I thought, it was very well put together, and it was great being there and being in front of the students. I think that taught them a lot of stuff, but in reality, that the council meetings really, I think, should be here too as well.
Councillor O'Brien? Oh, sorry, Councillor Wilson first.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to say that staff has also indicated it's much more efficient for them time-wise and also economically as well, and it's cost-effective as well. So, and the other feedback that I have had from people is that they really like to watch the agenda of the meetings at home, so whenever they want to, and if they aren't taped, then there's no way to watch them. So that's really my main reason. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to echo Councillor Chandler's suggestion that Committee of the Whole meetings could be considered off-site. However, I truly believe that the forum is the proper format that we have and location because of the staff having all the resources right next door to us. And being here, it's an awful lot of work for the staff as well to have all the possible information with them as required. And we're trying to lessen staff's workload, which is horrendously huge. So the thing is that that's one factor, but the other factor is that it's not as if we're like Toronto, where the thing is that, it's huge and you got your different areas in it and so forth where you have to move around to hit the different, they don't call them neighborhoods, but the neighborhoods and so forth. Parksville is Parksville, so by moving our location to Bolinas School, we're actually moving it 3 blocks away. By moving it to Knox United, I guess we're moving it about 2 blocks away. I don't think any of our residents would consider it a hardship, that they would prefer to attend at Knox United. I too echo the problems that we had in between the acoustics as far as the sound systems that went. It made it ineffective in many ways because we couldn't hear what else the other individuals were saying in the reports and so forth. And we're making fairly serious decisions here. And the thing is, we need all the information and we need it clear. And we have that here available to us in the forum. And I believe that this is where we should be making those decisions. Thank you.
Through the mayor to council, just wanted to add in my view on this. I quite liked going to Bolinas to be able to have our meetings. I think the intention of being able to move around the community and add some excitement to it was well received. At the church, I know there wasn't as great of a turnout, and the way that it wasn't filmed and broadcasted is an issue. But what I've seen happen at other committee meetings, like with the Oceanside Services Committee, where they bring in a videographer to film it, and then it gets uploaded. So there are ways to resolve those issues when you're at other locations. I think when we find issues, we could try to find solutions to them rather than just abandoning the plan. This is a great location. We do have the equipment here. I definitely support that, but I don't think we should give up looking at community engagement. And we did approve the meetings last fall as to when we would go traveling and where. So if we're not happy with the locations, maybe we can reevaluate the frequency of them, but I wouldn't want to tie our hands to where we couldn't do that if we wanted to.
I'm going to echo Councillor Fraz's points. We all, each and every one of us, said that we wanted to be transparent when we were elected to this position. And part of the re-election is to open up the communications and get it out to the community. I've been twice now to the high school. I've been twice to the United Church, and then you were in one time. The 2 times previously that I have been there, the sound system worked fine. It was the individual that is the sound person, did a great job when we were there the first time 8 to 10 years ago. And the high school, I think, was, you got to get out to the students, and that's how you do it, by being here inside every meeting doesn't get you out to appeal to these people and get them to see what's going on. I think that for us, we need to be transparent. We need to be out there. We need to be communicating. And you know what? For the number of people, I've heard numbers as low as 5 and 6 people at a time watching on the internet, and that's been it. So if we lose out those 5 or 6 and we can get to 20 or 30 students, that to me is a huge upside. If we can get a crowd at the United Church, maybe we just have to look at how we did it. We made some mistakes on it. Maybe we need to look at how we market ourselves going there so that we get the people out. I recall 10 years ago when we had our meeting at the United Church, there was probably 30 or 40 people there that night. And although, we probably made some mistakes or got people angry at us, and that's why they all come out to yell. But at the end of the day, yeah, maybe that's what we need to do. But at the end of the day, we are elected by the people. We need to be out to the people. I'm not suggesting all the time. Twice a year is not a hardship for us to have to go out there. So I'm going to be voting against this, although I understand why the Councillor Wilson is asking for it. I have to disagree on this particular one. So, having said that, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? 3, 1, 2. All those opposed? 4. It's turned down. Sorry, declined. Are there any other motions? I've got a notice of motion now, which is one that I have asked to have brought up. We've been in office now for 7 months, so I'd like to I'll move this myself, and I need a seconder so that we can have a discussion on oh, wait a minute, it's a notice of motion, sorry, my fault. We'll bring it to, this is the motion that I'll bring back at the next meeting, which will be in September. All right, sorry, got confused. Pardon? No, it's a notice of motion. I didn't give it.
It was on the agenda.
Was it?
Yeah.
All right.
You put it on ahead.
I've got them all marked as notice of motions on the top of my pages here, so I apologize for the confusion. All right, so I'm moving it. I need a seconder for this, seconded by Councillor Fraz. Discussion. Councillor Fraz.
At this time, you're looking to get staff to draft up a policy or some recommendations around it?
That's correct.
Okay, so I guess there's not too much to ask then on what they might be.
The first one, point A, is the one that is probably the only solid one. The rest of them are for staff to come back with, and that's the reconsideration. Point should be taken that tonight's reconsideration would have been okay based on this, okay, because it was the prevailing side that asked for the reconsideration. So it would have been fine. But I just want to make it clear as to what it is so that we're not, every time somebody loses a vote, they're putting their hand up and saying reconsideration. You have to be on the prevailing side in order to ask for it to be reconsidered. Okay.
I have a question then regarding under B, the use of cell phones in council chambers. Without really knowing what it's going to be asking of us, I just thought I'd give my thoughts on this. I don't see cell phone use as something that's currently an issue that we have here. Cell phones are typically, we use them for emails, for note-taking and so on. I would not like to see it discouraging us or where we could not use our phones for that type of use during a meeting. Because sometimes we do need to refer to emails or look up, on Google Maps where a location and address is. That would be my thoughts around that.
Thank you. Note's been taken on it and be passed on. Any other points? Councillor O'Brien?
If I may, Your Worship, I was just, on the second to last one, appropriate use of microphones. I'm not sure where that's going. What's that's considering appropriate use? Is there I noticed that this is also for the gallery as well as the council, but I'm not sure what that is intending to address.
The idea is for us to be, and I'm probably the biggest offender of it because I tend to talk without the microphone being on, so it's just proper so that it's courteous usage. And we'll see what staff comes up with. They may come back and say that's not something that's that big of a deal. Let's eliminate it, and we can do it. The problem is, and the reason why I've asked for it to be as extensive as it is, that this is a bylaw, and in order to change a bylaw, it takes a little bit more effort to do than just a resolution or a policy statement. So if we're going to make the changes, let's make them once and once only for the year. So that's why I've put everything in there that I think so. All right, pass it on. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you very much. Notice, anybody else have any notice of motions? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you.
This is a true notice of motion.
Well, I could either make it as a notice of motion, or if I have a seconder, then I would bring it to the floor. But the motion would be to allow hanging of banners as presented in the Orange Bridge Business District and to work with staff for installation, and further that the 75th anniversary of the City of Parksville has precedent for anniversary design and future installation with, I'm not sure if it's been formed, the advisory group or the, I'm not.
It hasn't been formed yet.
It hasn't done that, so. For the economic development aspects, the beautification aspects, and also in our strategic priorities. So I can leave it as a notice of motion and brought forward to our next meeting.
Okay. You need to, if you're going to do that, then we need a majority of votes to have it discussed now. Okay.
If I could have it discussed.
Yeah, I need let's take a vote on who's in favor of moving this motion now rather than, okay, 2, 3. Fails. So it goes as a notice of motion for the next meeting, okay? All right, any other notices of motion? All right. New business. I have one piece of new business that we need to talk about. The appointment of a bylaw compliance officer that has to be brought to council. And bylaw enforcement has become a service increasingly in demand by the citizens and is currently on pace for another record-breaking year in terms of calls and complaints. As a result, the city has been working with the town of Qualicum Beach to bring on a term bylaw enforcement officer. This individual will alternate working with the city and the town each week for the next 4 months. The appointment by council of the bylaw enforcement officer gives the officer the authority to enforce all of the city's bylaws. The city requires the appointment of an individual that could represent council in court to defend any of the city's bylaws. Without the appointment of a bylaw enforcement officer, the court would be forced to dismiss the matter, requiring the testimony of this position due to the lack of legislative authority. Under provisions of the Offense Act, for the purposes of the service of a summons in respect of an alleged offense under a bylaw of the municipality, a peace officer includes bylaw enforcement officers appointed under the Police Act. This appointment also legitimizes the enforcement of municipal bylaws by means of an MTI system, that's municipal ticket information. Not appointing a staff member to this position would result in a court action being dismissed by the justice due to lack of authority. This appointment does not preclude the staff from consulting council ahead of taking any court action. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that the council of the city of Parksville hereby appoint Jason Hollister as bylaw enforcement officer in accordance with Section 264, Section 1, subsection B of the Community Charter to investigate and enforce all municipal bylaws for the terms of his employment as a bylaw compliance officer with the City of Parksville. Just, I need a seconder for that. All right, seconded by Councillor Chandler. I moved it, okay. I'll just fill you in a little bit more. It is a 4-month term. What happens is one week this individual will work 2 days in Qualicum Beach and 3 days in Parksville. The next week he will reverse that. Okay, so it's every other time. I think this is a good use of funds. It hasn't cost us any additional, we're not increasing the budgets at all. This has been money that has been saved through other situations with the council, or with the staffing. So it's not going to increase our budget whatsoever for this. And it provides us with somebody for the weekends, which is really what we're looking for. So, any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Other new business. Councillor O'Brien.
If I may, Your Worship, I would just like to mention that I, as well as Councillor Wilson, and as I understand, the Mayor, also attended Beach Fest sand sculpting award ceremonies, and the Mayor was there at the opening ceremonies as well. Anyways, this past weekend, I just wanted to say that the enthusiasm of the sculptors was evidenced in the amazing works of art, the festival event. This festival event truly exemplifies the effort and dedication of placing Parksville on the world stage. I just want to give a heads up and a well done to the Parksville Beach Festival organization. They truly have aspired to greatness and achieved it. It's a great festival. If you haven't taken it in already, I highly suggest it. And besides the sculptors, there is the art in the park that's happening during their duration, as well as music on every Friday and Saturday evening, also in the community park. So I think this is a great event and a very well organized, and my hat's off to them for doing such a great job. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to make a couple of yes. So the first one is on Memorial. I just want to say kudos to our staff for doing an absolutely fantastic job on the workshops for Memorial Avenue. So it's really well underway, and it's a good thing. The other one I want to mention is that the Mayor and I attended the opening ceremony for the Oceanside Arts Council Soft Shore, and that's a very nice art exhibit that everybody should try to get to. It's worthwhile, I think. Would you not say, Mr. Mayor? Thank you.
Councillor Fraz.
Through the Mayor to Council, I just wanted to give everybody an update on the childcare spaces funding that's out there. Just got word of today of some increase to the capital costs funding available. As you know, that we do have a needs assessment that was a grant that was successful, going out to an RFP right now. The increase for the amount is from $1 million to $3 million for the capital cost of a project. It's funding for up to 100% of the project. So I'm telling you this because hopefully as we think about where we could have increased childcare spaces in our community, perhaps it's with affordable housing coupled in there, or community centers like rec centers, or through co-op housing. If we implement that into it and apply for the funding, it's $3 million to 100% of it. So that I just got wind of today.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Last week I attended on the Mayor's behalf the RDN Transit meetings, and although it doesn't directly affect us in the Parksville and Oceanside area, some of the new routing that is underway, it is, I found it rather interesting. There's also some was a presentation by someone just outside of our area in regards to the handy dart services and being able to get into Parksville and Qualicum Beach, obviously for a multitude of different things that are required, shopping and doctor's appointments and such. She is I liked her phrase. She didn't put it as handicapped, but differently abled. And Councillor Fraz's daughter attended in the audience. The most well-behaved 3.5-year-old, 4-hour meetings. And it was pretty amazing, and he's already taught her how to vote no. So thank you for my being able to attend in your place. We also had a great discussion on bicycling and that for getting to meetings and that as well. So it's really interesting, you know, we look at climate change and that, so trying to reduce our carbon footprint. So they were some great meeting topics and conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Worship. Through to Councillor O'Brien, I just wanted to mention that we would love to, well, I would anyways, I'd love to see if you would talk to the board of the Beach Fest and see if maybe we could pick a week or somewhere in there that we could all kind of go down and attend and be on the ticket booth there for, you know, 4-hour stretch or whatever, just to sort of show our support of the Beach Fest group.
If I may, through your worship, through Councillor Chandler, the volunteers that they have on the ticket booth that they have right now are a very sought-after commodity in this community. Very, very much so. I believe I have the stats here, but they have a number of volunteer groups that already do this, and they do a shift change a couple times during the day. During that time that they do by putting in their volunteer time on it, they are also, these are all nonprofits that are running the ticket booth. And so as a token of appreciation, the Beach Fest then offer remuneration to them at the end of the festival. And they look forward to this because they provide so many, it's such a diverse group, they provide a great multitude of services to this, and so they really rely on getting those funds. And so I think that they'd probably not really appreciate your effort because they'd probably Shanghai you because you're going to cut into their remuneration. I know, there is, but the thing is that this organization is built up very much with they have a large executive of volunteers that work a huge amount of hours. I would suggest if you would like to do anything, it would be just to really show your support to friends, relatives, and anytime you get a chance is to mention Beach Festival, because it is indeed a festival. And it's not just a one-off like it used to be for the weekend, and then the tide would come in and wipe it all out. But the thing is that I think as council that we can give our support by pushing it through all of our connections that we have as to what an amazing festival that this really is. I'm sure they would appreciate your offer. I was down there yesterday passing them out, and I give a bunch of the volunteers a bunch of City of Parksville pins that they're very appreciative of. And they're wearing proudly now, but the thing is that as of this week, there'll be another group that comes in next week to take it. But I'm sure they do appreciate your gesture. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm just going to interject a little bit more with Councillor O'Brien. They are ambassadors. So they are GATE ambassadors. I've worked many hours as a Rotarian and been a GATE ambassador in the past. There was, I believe,